It seems that the full moon once again is upon us, and you know what that means, right? It's time to rear our meta-transformative head skyward and howl until our lungs give in. But that's a poorly conceived lycan stereotype, and thankfully for us, the werewolves that make their way onto this particular list are far more concerned with global domination than they are with skulking away on a mountaintop, alerting vigilant villagers as to their existence. These are finely tuned hunting machines, and believe me, these lycanthropes could certainly give their blood-sucking counterparts a run for their money. So let's take a look. Hello horror fans, what's going on, and once again welcome back to the Scariest channel on YouTube, Top 5 Scary Videos. As per usual, I'll be your horror host Jack Finch. Today we curiously take a look at the top 5 scariest werewolves in literature, part 2. Roll the clip. For the curious amongst you, of course, that scene was from 2003's Underworld, starring Kate Beckinsale and Scott Speedman as both the hunter and the hunted, respectively. And as many of you will agree, is a downright awesome film, whichever side of the eternal divide you fall on. It also leads us to an important point. I saw many suggestions in our last video, and it's safe to say that you lycan loyalists are incredibly passionate, shall we say, when it comes to their literature. And yes, there are some awesome novels, deservedly, but what we're concerned with are the mechanics of these werewolves, the stuff that gets us thinking. So let's begin. Kicking off at number 5, Wolfgang von UBERWALD, DISCWORLD. And it is music to my lowly ears to hear the name of the late great eternal imagination and one of the most unique and wholeheartedly distinct writers of recent times, Sir Terry Pratchett, right here on Top 5 Scary Videos. Rest in peace. And really, without detracting from the werewolfness of this list, it really is important to note the creative achievements of this brilliant man. DISCWORLD is one of the most unique series ever created. And of course, in tune with that uniqueness, we have one of the rare occasions where DISCWORLD got a non-tongue-in-cheek dose of horror. And how would Sir Terry do that? Of course, Nancy werewolves. But obviously, fantasy Nancy werewolves. You see, whilst we'll touch on this later, there is a literary vein often mined by writers when applied to lycanthropy, much similar to their vampiric counterparts. If you're an all-powerful bestial creature of myth and legend, more often than not, you treat people like trash, and you want to take over the world. Go figure, right? The city of Ankh-Morpork is central to the DISCWORLD series, and its protection is down to the City Watch. One of those watchmen is Captain Angua, who just so happens to be a kind and noble werewolf. His brother though, Wolfgang, he's a piece of work. You see, the two of them are descendants of a long line of werewolves, and because of that, Wolfgang believes in his divine right to superiority and domination. He views anything other than a pure-blood werewolf such as himself as an abomination, and so because of that, he believes it's pretty much open season when it comes to feasting on the peasantry. In his family's ancestral seat of UBERWALD, which is Pratchett's home county of everything horror, Wolfgang steps up his master plan to take over DISCWORLD in the most ruthless and relentless manner possible. During the event of the 5th Elephant, Wolfgang reinstates the ancient rule of the game, where a human victim is chased for sport by a vicious and relentless pack of werewolves. Although similar to the age-old tactics of the aristocracy, Wolfgang's version of the game is rigged, and it's a pretty unsightly and unfair bloodbath. However, I'll leave you all to discover Wolfgang's ultimate fate. Take a look. Swinging in at number 4, FENRIR, GREYBACK, Harry Potter. And you may be thinking, what the hell, Harry Potter? Jack, come on dude. But I'd say, hear me out, and also tone it down a bit, because when you actually hold a lens to this tooth and claw ridden character in particular, FENRIR GREYBACK is messed up. Put it this way, to cut a long story short, this guy didn't join Voldemort's cause because he believed in the Death Eater's ideological stance on wizarding superiority. He joined for one reason. If he allied himself with the Death Eaters, FENRIR would have a larger pool of potential victims to turn into other lycans, particularly children. In his own words, bite them young and raise them away from their parents, raise them to hate normal wizards. That's messed up. FENRIR GREYBACK is a werewolf who is so bitter, twisted and corrupted by the fact that he was infected with lycanthropy that his sole purpose on Earth is to infect as many other innocent people, particularly kids, and inflict them with the same pain that he feels. Metaphors aside, I should reiterate that this is a children's book. Yeah, and it doesn't stop there because it gets personal. As the series explains, Remus Lupin, the kind and noble protector of Harry Potter throughout the later novels, who just so happens to also be a lycan, was in turn infected by FENRIR. But do you know why? It wasn't just a chance occurrence that Mr. Lupin was a lycan, it was because when he was a kid, Remus's father, Lyle Lupin, who was an employee at the Ministry of Magic, publicly stated that werewolves deserved nothing less than death following the murder of 2 innocent muggle children at the hands of FENRIR and his werewolf pack. When FENRIR heard those remarks, you know what he did? He didn't get revenge on Lyle, the guy who said it. He waited, bided his time, and on Remus's 5th birthday, he snuck in his bedroom, attacked him, and bit him, infecting him as a werewolf for the rest of his life. He infected the guy's infant child on his birthday. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear that FENRIR Greyback is an evil and vile werewolf that holds a grudge, but compared to some of the most evil of his literary counterparts, this guy makes it personal. And it's messed up. Next up at number 3, The Howling. And yeah, I do mean the whole novel, because although there are a few terrifying individuals in particular, the entire village of Drago, California deserves its spot on this list. And we're also going to slap on The Howling 2 on this list, because Gary Brandner's series only proves to get grosser and grosser the more lycan scar tissue that's added. And it's a little bit confusing really, because it's important to note that the 3rd entry of the Howling series, 1985's Echoes, completely rewrites the events of the first 2 books, which is an odd thing for an author to do, but forget about that. We've got Roy and Marcia to contend with, and they're pretty angry. First released in 1977 and written by Gary Brandner, in some sense, The Howling is perhaps the most tame depiction of lycans on this list, but it's in the savagery and innate will to commit violence far removed from the rationale of the human mind that allows it to earn its spot here. There is no humanity left behind in this series, just the primal hunger of the beast. It's a difficult trait to pull off, but when it's done right, it's certainly effective. You see, other than some pretty painful transformations, the werewolves in the Howling series are pretty cut and shut. For the most part, they're wolves. Not at all like their depiction in the 1981 movie of the same name, which you may or may not be aware of. And yeah, side note, that movie's awesome. But despite that, these wolves are phenomenally written, aptly taking their literary space as completely different creatures. You see, part of the curious allure of lycanthropy is the humanoid remnants left behind, that otherwise human form, albeit far more toothy and far more hairy. In Brandner's novel, however, all of that is done away with, and in the wild, particularly in the mountain region of Drago, California, the howling herd on the edge of town could be man or wolf alike, and that's exactly where they want you. Also, that's without detailing the bleak tragedy told throughout the events of the first novel, which is pretty far-flung from the events of the film, and you should certainly give it a read if you haven't. But it's in the second novel where Brandner really takes a terrifying turn in the mechanics of these visceral werewolves, and no spoilers, but if you're waiting for some kind of anthropomorphics, yeah, The Howling 2 has a sort of version of that. Pretty gross. Coming in at number 2, lycanthrope vampiri, NECROSCOPE. And yeah, I'm not entirely sure what else to call them, because if you're expecting this list to be exclusively non-vampire, I hate to break it to you, but Brian Lumley has something to say on the matter. And admittedly, whilst it may be a little sacrilege to honour the Crimson Lords here, the NECROSCOPE version of lycanthropy truly is something else entirely. As a brief overview to Brian Lumley's phenomenal horror fantasy series, vampires in NECROSCOPE are a species known as the vampiri, an ancient species of creature from an alien dimension known as Starside, Sunside, who have existed on our world for millennia through the use of 2 interdimensional portals. Their vampirism is bestowed upon them by a sort of leech-like parasite that forms a symbiotic bond, granting them an infinite lifespan, untold powers, and the need to sustain it all by means of blood. Pretty cool, right? Well, that same leech, in several cases throughout the vampiri's history, has a tendency to infect non-human creatures, often wolves or foxes, which, in the technicalities of this list, certainly adhere to the principles of lycanthropy. You see, in several cases, these vampiri wolves can assume a human-esque form to lure prey toward them, to infect and further spread their leech, as is seen with the Dweller. However, in other cases, true lycans have been bred purposefully by means of infecting the vampiri egg with the vampiric disease of lycanthropy, in most cases to horrific and immensely powerful results. One of those resulting vampire werewolf hybrids was Radu Lycan, the Dog Lord, who was exiled from Sunside Starside to Earth, where he resigned himself in classic werewolf fashion to dominating the planet and spreading his unique vampiri leech to a new unified empire of werewolf vampires. Sensing a theme here. Now, whilst Radu is an exception, as well as several other minor characters, it's also important to note that lycanthropy in this series, more often than not, goes wrong, and the results are, well, completely and utterly horrifying, and also disgusting. Yeah, definitely sensing a theme here. And finally, coming in at our number 1 spot, the GAROU, World of Darkness. And you know what, guys? I saw so many of you passionately advocating for this entry to make up our list, and I'll hold my hands up and admit, I'm sold. I'm completely sold. After delving into the inner workings of Werewolf the Apocalypse and Werewolf the Forsaken, I'm relatively certain that the GAROU are some of the most complete and utterly compelling monsters of horror ever penned. And I say penned in the loose term because although there are a vast wealth of novels written in this universe, the bulk of World of Darkness is based upon a fantasy tabletop series, which you may be familiar with, particularly if you're a fan of Vampire the Masquerade. But that's by the by, because I'm fairly certain that we can all agree on one thing. Tabletop is literature. If it's of a written form, it's literature. It doesn't have to be a novel penned in 1887 for it to be worthy of merit. It just has to be good. And believe me, the GAROU certainly earn their place at the top of the pile. Although relatively difficult to get a hold of now, the subsequent werewolf novels of the series detailed the origin of the titular GAROU, and conceptually speaking, it bites a little bit closer to the bone than the rest of them. As told in GAROU oral history, this secret civilization of lycans have always existed, clawing onto their existence by means of their eternal duty to Gaia, maintaining the balance of nature. Essentially, what sets the GAROU apart is that they are the arbiter of humanity. If human civilization gets too out of control, the GAROU sweep in and cull an out of control population. In its purest form, World of Darkness lays out the true meaning of the lycan and their human counterparts, the hunter and the hunted. And not only that, but these eternal predators have established complete mastery of their transformation, harnessing the ability to pretty much appear as any werewolf that you've ever seen in fiction. Their tribes are numerous, they have complete and utter domination over their planet, and in the truest terms, the GAROU are a literal force of nature. Yeah, deserved number 1. Well, there we have it, horror fans, our list for the top 5 scariest werewolves in literature. Part 2. What do you guys think? Do you agree, disagree, have any more to add to this list? Then let us know your thoughts down in the comment section below, as well as any choice picks of your own. Before we depart from today's video though, let's first take a quick look at some of your more creative comments from over the past few days. First up, Mimi Katzen says, "Where's my popcorn? This is gonna be good. What's your favourite literary monster, Jack?" And hey Mimi, I'm glad you've got the popcorn confidence, but that is a difficult question. Oh man. There's so many to pick from. You know what? I'm going to stick with the classic and say Frankenstein's monster, because everyone always gets his name wrong, and yeah, he's great. And finally, Peace Turtle Infinity says, "Jack, can you introduce yourself as Sir Weird Beard in your next video?" Yeah, sure. Why not? I guess I could do that. Well, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for in today's video. Just stick around all the way until the end. If you were a fan of this video, or just top 5 scary videos in general, then please be a dear, hit that thumbs up button, as well as that subscribe bell, and I'll be seeing you in the next one. As per usual, I've been your horror host, Sir Weird Beard, I guess. You've been watching top 5 scary videos, and until next time, you take it easy.